Good morning, everyone. We are so pleased to be here at Big Ideas Fest 2015. We'd like to talk to you about the solution that we created around this design challenge 5 years ago. This is Susan. And let's take a look at Susan on paper in 2010. We see that she holds an associate's degree. She has a certificate in management. We see company names, positions, responsibilities. But what we can't see here is the quality of that certificate program, any kind of artifact that represents her coursework, and most glaringly, what doesn't appear here is the years of informal and formal training and experience that equips Susan with the knowledge and skills that she needs to perform a job that she's just been passed over for because she lacks a BA. While we can look to letters of recommendation and the interview to flesh out this portrait, these are not sources valued by her employer enough to warrant hiring or promoting her on that basis. When we met Susan in 2010, we determined that what she needed was a way to demonstrate the competencies that she'd acquired through years of formal and informal learning experiences. In 2015, with more people than ever seeking alternative means to post-secondary education, with rapidly changing professions, with a constant need to retool one's skill set, the conversation between employers and potential employees has shifted from credentials to competencies.
All right, so what happened in 2010? LinkedIn met Match.com. And a miracle happened. LearningMash.com was created. And what LearningMash.com does, it basically redefines the way that we validate and credential learning experiences in this country. It serves two functions. It provides a research portal for learners like Susan to really search and look at credentialing programs, whether traditional, non-traditional, to make better informed decisions. She can track real-life professionals so that she can kind of create her own career path. But most importantly, kind of the big idea around it is the Competency ARticulation Tool. We like to call this CART. That allows individuals like Susan to create a portfolio, upload artifacts that demonstrate the competency levels and skills acquired through this lifetime of learning. Those artifacts are then validated through self-advocacy, peer reviews, educators, professionals, and then she receives endorsements around these competencies, essentially creating a new dynamic resume that moves away from the one-dimensional approach that we're used to really a three-dimensional kind of approach. So now, here in 2015, 50 million users later, a merger with streetcred.edu, .com, .org, right? We found that really the concepts that are driving LearningMash.com around competency articulation are now influencing the conversations at even the K through 12 level and looking at how student learning is assessed in the classroom in a multidimensional approach to really capture their understanding and competency levels. So, if you've not checked this out and you're not among the 50 million users, we encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was terrific. Really interesting. I love competency articulation. A really nice phrase, at least new to me. But the focus on capabilities, I think, is really fascinating to me. I've been thinking a lot that school defines kids at a certain level in terms of deficiencies. And one way of turning that around is to really think of what the capabilities are that they have. You know, like using a cell phone, getting about and figuring out, a bus system. All kinds of things they know how to do that perhaps other people take for granted. So I really like that initial focus, and it really was. It's interesting to see how you guys are exploring similar areas, and yet, I can see in each one something that you might focus on that was different than street cred. I mean, they could all be part of the same overall framework, but there's, you came at it in a really kind of fresh way.
One of the things that I really appreciated about what you did was you took on associate's degree level students and said, these are, you actually, I think you called them, like people who hadn't achieved a bachelor's yet. And I think that that is a fantastic segment to think about, because I think often we're really focused on either K-12 or a 4-year degree. And so those conversations are very different than the folks who are kind of in the middle with those associate's degrees, right? Because so often they do have the exact profile that you're talking about. Lots and lots of other amazing life experiences. And there really hasn't been a great kind of platform to be able to recognize all of that. So I loved the audience that you chose, just as your sample. I know that's not everybody, but I think that would be a really interesting segment to start with. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was you thought about how it would influence the K-12 system. Because, ultimately, what's happening right now is that so often we're looking sort of from the other direction. So how is K-12 maybe trying to influence higher ed? And so I thought this was really an interesting way to say, how can kind of the workplace or the or employers / community college students influence the K-12 experience? There were a ton of pieces of this that I thought were really interesting.
When I was watching your presentation, one of the thoughts I had is how could the work that you've done actually during this conference be reflected in a system like this? And it's kind of squishy, it's a little bit hard. It's not like just putting up a photo or writing a blog entry. How do you translate that into what are some of the capabilities you might have gained from participating in this? And I don't know if it occurred to you as well. Oh, great.
They've already finished building it, actually.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
So
We can move in tomorrow.
So one of the things we talked about was trying to, if it's competency-based, that we could have things like design thinking that would be listed there, collaborative teamwork, and everybody who's here who's worked in the Collab could be one of the peer endorsers. And then there's also a space for expert endorsements as well from professors or employers on there.
As well as a badging system similar to the buttons that we're all wearing now that certify us as part of having gone through this experience. But I would personally upload my video. That would be an artifact that demonstrated the product that came out of this experience.
Yeah.
So would you think about, you guys just mentioned the buttons. I mean, would you think about maybe having kind of a little badge system of some kind or a button system of some kind? I see lots of heads nodding.
Yeah.
And I may not have said that clear in the presentation, I apologize, but right, there is kind of a badging system that we mentioned, and there was also another piece that I kind of missed, and that is still the virtual counseling piece, because again, you still need the guidance and kind of the structure if you have questions, and how to navigate through, and so that's an additional component that's still in the LearningMash.com.
Mm-hmm. We talked about with the other group, the like button on Facebook, and to some degree have similar but a little bit more significant interactions around like this group validating the work of each other and say, yes, we were part of that group, we did something here, we acquired some skills, and here's some evidence of that. But I think there's so many areas that it's really be fun to sort of like see what that list of capabilities are, even in design thinking, and then map it to kind of real world activities that you've already participated in yourself, and say, how, is that enough? Is it rich enough? Or is it, how do they relate to each other?
And there's a project that's going on right now led by CALE, the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, and they're actually trying to put together a virtual portfolio center so that people who want to be able to show that they've learned things building on competencies, they actually will have their portfolios reviewed online by faculty members from across the country. So, I mean, there are things out there that you could also kind of build on or tap into.
See, CALE needs to buy streetcred.com.
Yeah, CALE needs to buy a bunch of stuff. No, I mean, I think that's sort of the interesting thing is, again, all of the groups are touching on things that those of us in philanthropy, and again, lots of legislators are saying, that really should happen. You know what should happen? And they think they're the only ones coming up with the ideas. Yeah. And they haven't gotten any further than just sort of throwing a bunch of words out there. And that's what I think is really exciting so far about what you guys have been doing is you've actually tried to you really did try to get to prototype. Like, how do we think about that in a deeper way than just oh, you know what, we should have an early alert system. We should really think
Right.
about competencies.
And I think the best opportunity in education is in this sort of collaborative, the fact that you guys can collaborate in almost a non-competitive way. So you don't have to say this is a business idea and I've got to fund that separately from street cred or whatever. You really could say, let's just make sure we're not duplicating effort here. Let's make sure we have kind of pieces that interlock. We have some even social issues we've got to deal with, like privacy and stuff, and we might either defer that to other groups that are working on that, or we might want to tackle that in common. But without sort of losing this steam that you have in your own project, there's just really great opportunity to connect to what other people are doing.